Hi there, it's Peter Chapman from SKUFood. And every year we spend time listening to retailers, consumers, producers, processors, everybody in the value chain to help you figure out what you should be focused on. And this year, as we shift into 2026, we want to share our 2026 trends with you, things that are important to people in the food industry and what's happening out there. And this year we called our 2026 trends Selling in a New World because things have changed a lot and producers and processors really have to react to that and make sure that they reflect these trends of what's happening in their businesses. So let's dive in and talk about the first trend, which is an obvious one given how much things have changed in the last 12 months, and that's the fact that as producers and processors of Canadian products, you need to make sure that people understand the Canadian content in your products. And don't assume they know. Perhaps you've been doing it for 40 years and you think everybody knows, but they don't. They're bombarded with messages all the time, and it needs to be really clear on packaging, in your consumer marketing. Anytime you have an opportunity to do trade spend with demos or POS, make sure that people understand where your product is from and how you can differentiate your product within the category because of the Canadian content that you have. Our second trend this year is if you are exporting beef to the United States, perhaps it's time to look at new markets. Given the volatility and some of the different things that are happening, we know that there is a big world out there, but it takes time. You need to understand new consumers. You need to understand new distribution channels. You need to understand new retailers. So if you are exporting and you want to perhaps reduce some risk and look at some other markets, it's time to start is now. There's lots of support out there for producers and processors who are interested in looking at new markets. Perhaps your values align a little bit more with Europe or Asia or other markets, but now is the time to start doing the work. It does take a long time, and chances are your product's going to have to go on a boat or a plane to get to that new market. And these are all challenges, but the rest of the world does a lot of trade, exporting, on the water and through the air, whatever it is. So you need to figure out what those channels look like, understand what you need to do to your products or your packaging, and take advantage of those opportunities because the world is looking for Canadian products. They really believe we have a great food and beverage production and processing system, network, food safety, all those kind of things, great access to quality raw materials and ingredients. So get out there and explore and see what the opportunities are for your business. Our third trend is really more of a domestic kind of trend, is the fact that if you're only selling in Canada, true tonnage growth will be a real win. We have experienced considerably large population growth in this country through immigration, through foreign students, through temporary foreign workers, lots of different places where we have seen population growth in recent years, which translates into people buying more food. As that changes and the government policies change with regards to immigration, and perhaps we're learning to slow down the amount of people coming into the country, real tonnage growth is going to be a win. So if you can prove to your customers that your product is growing in units or tonnage year over year, then that should be a positive for them. So make sure that you focus on that and measure it within your business. Also, we know that the sales role, that job of sales within your food and beverage business, continues to shift to really a much more technical focus. In the past, having great relationships with customers is important, and it's important to build those relationships now. But the role of a salesperson within your food and beverage business really has some requirements of technical expertise. You need to be able to navigate through the retailer's portals. You need to be able to do the work to get your product included into the in-store programs and those kind of things. You don't just submit it to the retailer anymore. The supplier has to do a lot of the work. So your salespeople need to be capable of doing that work, or you're going to miss out on the opportunities. So make sure that the people within your business responsible for sales have some of those technical capabilities. And if you don't have it, you need to go out and find someone who does, because it's more and more important all the time. We're also seeing within the Canadian market the decline of the market share for conventional stores. So we see a lot of growth in the discount stores. We see a lot of growth in club. We see growth in mass. We see online. All of these different channels are capturing more and more market share, and a lot of it is coming at the expense of conventional stores. And conventional stores being the Loblaws, the Sobeys, the Metros, the Save On Foods, those kind of formats that our retail customers have within their portfolio. And this is important because the conventional stores are the ones with the biggest listing bases. So if you're the number 3 or number 4 player in the category, there's a risk that you will really start to see a sales decline, because if the conventional store is losing sales, you're not probably going to get listed into the discount format that has only half of the SKUs, or maybe only the 1 and 2 leading brands and private label. So it can have a real impact on a producer or processor's volume. So make sure you look at where your customers are doing sales and try to make sure that your product is on the shelf in the stores where we're seeing growth in the marketplace. We also are experiencing a lot of policy shift coming from the United States in terms of food production and that kind of thing. So a lot of accelerated changes in terms of food dyes in product, in terms of ultra high processed products. They are really looking to make a shift, and that has an impact on the Canadian marketplace. So if you're selling product into that market, you need to understand what some of the new regulations are. If you are producing and selling in the Canadian market or other markets, perhaps access to ingredients or those kind of things could be restricted because they're not going to be used in the US market anymore. So it's really important to stay on top of what the administration are doing in the United States with regards to food policy and food production policy and processing policy, and what impact it will have on your business. And we're also seeing accelerated growth in the US market of the GLP-1 drugs, which really suppress appetite. We're seeing big shifts in consumer demand and consumer behavior for people who are on these programs. So we're going to see it in Canada as well. And it's going to have a profound shift on some categories, a real decline in categories like snacking and that kind of thing, where people just don't have the appetite for the products, so they're not going to buy them. So it's important to see where they're going in the US market, and also try to forecast what the impact will be on the Canadian market in the categories where you compete. We continue to see more and more additions into products. So if you go to the shelf and you look and you see protein being put into a lot of different products, from whether it's pancake mix to water. And then we're seeing things like mushrooms being added to different products to improve, their functional food capacity and that kind of thing. So we're going to see more and more of that. And it's important for you to understand, what is the impact on your products? Are you working on some of that innovation? Is it going to be in your category where it might impact the sales of your product? And we wonder whether at some point consumers are going to say, if there's not these things in it, what is it missing? As opposed to perhaps what it is in its kind of more natural state. But it's something to keep an eye on. And if you are especially in the sort of functional food space or the good for you space, a lot of innovation happening here, which could impact the sales of your products positive if you're on the trend and able to deliver some of these innovations, or it could impact negatively if other players in the category are working on it. After many years of negotiation and work on behalf of a lot of people in our industry, the Canadian Grocery Code of Conduct is finally in action in 2026. So now the dispute resolution is an option for players in the industry. So it's really important that people take the time to understand those listing agreements that they have with their customers. What is the expectation of the retailer? What have suppliers committed to? And if there are things happening that the supplier is not happy with, they believe the retailers have made some kind of an arbitrary decision or something, then that dispute resolution option is there for people. So it will be interesting to see whether we are privy to some examples where people are trying to use this new option to level the playing field a little bit, or whether we'll see the retailers kind of shy away from putting any kind of arbitrary changes or fees into the market, which really prompted the implementation of the Grocery Code of Conduct. So it is in play now, so we'll see how that works for the large producers and processors in the country, but also the small to medium ones who can participate in that Grocery Code of Conduct. Pricing continues to be volatile as we see geopolitical issues, climate change issues, lots of different things impacting production of raw materials and movement of food around the world. So prices are going to continue to be volatile, whether it's in your ingredients, your packaging, all the different components that you need to get your product produced. So stay on top of the pricing in your category. And we've seen huge increases in some, like cocoa and that kind of thing. So perhaps in 2026 it will subside and come down. And if it does, then that means the whole category might shift again. And you need to be very careful about being in the stores, watching what's going on with the pricing in your category. If your competitors are starting to move up and you don't move up, your retailer might wonder, why didn't they need to move up? Were they charging me too much before? Or perhaps you're going to see competitors move down if they do see reduced costs for commodities and retailers put pressure on suppliers to bring that decrease to the table. So get in the stores, make sure you stay on top of what's going on with pricing in your category, and try to stay as current as you can with it. And finally, given all the change and all the different things happening in the industry, we really believe that it is an opportunity for the Canadian food and beverage industry to define itself. For so many years, we've been in the shadow of large American multinational consumer packaged goods companies, and we've exported back and forth with a free trade agreement, but things have changed, and perhaps now it's an awesome opportunity to define a great, strong, vibrant Canadian food and beverage industry. As we said earlier, we have access to fantastic raw materials. We have a really good labor force that you can really get people working for you. We have Canadian businesses that are respected around the world, that people want to do business with. We have a food safety program that people respect. So Canadian food and beverage can be in demand, and now is the time to really define what that industry stands for and share it with the world. And as we said before, it takes time, but this is such a great opportunity for us to be strong and share all of the great products that our Canadian industry has with the rest of the world. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, we're here. You can give me a call, you can send me an email, but we're always appreciate the opportunity to work with producers and processors across the country to help them get their products on the shelf and into the shopping cart.